speeds up after time. Let's see.
Good evening, Melrosians the world over. I'm Tom Catalini.
I'm Sam Hammer.
Where is everybody? We know Jen is on sabbatical. Shampoo is marching through the woods in his snowshoes.
He's washing his hair.
He's washing his hair. And so tonight it is Sam Hammer and Tom Catalini here to co-host Let's Talk Melrose. And we're still two Melrosians that can talk.
We're good.
What?
It is live takeover episode. I could have predicted this on Facebook. Eugene, you're still beautifully muted. She's coming, folks. Hey, Conchetta.
Hi, what's up, Melrose?
Thank you for joining in right before everybody changed the channel when we said it was just Sam and I for the.
I can hear you finally. I don't know anything you said. I just saw my face appear on screen. So
it was mostly just talking about you and what a treat it is to have you back on the show. Eugenia Gibbons, the OG of Let's Talk Melrose. She is back in the house.
But everything is extraordinarily loud. So also typing, I can hear you typing.
Yeah, that's all right. Side. It reminds me of Jen.
It does. Well, thank you both for coming. You're saving the show for the evening. And we have really not much to talk about, but coming up later with a lot to talk about is Dana LeWinter, who is a Melrosian and was on the Melrose production. You're texting somebody on the side. Gibbons.
It's like the cat. Oh, the cat meme where he's like, the cat gif.
She's gone. She's out. That's a mic drop. That's all right. We'll cover for her till she gets back. Again, not at all unprecedented for co-hosts to come and go during the show.
Oh, I was about to say you run a tight ship, Tom. You and Sam, you kicked it right on out.
Yeah, you know what? It's like that. You ever see that movie commercial where the families go into the movies and they're rushing in to get, I don't know, they're rushing in for some reason before the movie starts, and one of the kids falls in the parking lot and the mother goes, "Leave him." You don't remember that show? It was a commercial. It wasn't a show. It was a commercial.
I hope she's able to return.
She'll be all right.
Back. So how did you all fare with the blizzard this weekend? What happened? Everybody's still talking about it.
So the first thing, this is life advice. The first thing when you're confronted with a challenging situation is do nothing and see if it goes away and if things get better. And that's what we did on Saturday was nothing. We didn't leave. And it was like by 5 p.m., the governor was making a storm update because we were doing just whatever, entertaining ourselves in the house. Around 5 o'clock, the governor is talking because I was like, should I go out and shovel or snowplow? And they said it was a couple more hours of the storm, wind blowing. So we didn't do anything till Sunday morning. And then we cleared it then. Conchetta, what did you do for the storm?
Oh, wow. Eugenia gets to come back. Sweet.
Yeah.
So this was our first blizzard as new homeowners. And we don't have like a whole lot of front yard space. So I was thinking, well, we'll be fine without a snowblower this first year. Like, I grew up in Boston. I'm used to like shoveling. It's fine. It was not fine. I am not okay. My body is jacked up. Jerron's body is jacked up. I don't know. We didn't even like fully shovel out our driveway. We only shoveled out like one section, and our two cars, we just like maneuver them to get out. It's ridiculous.
What
Did
was
you do
he
it Saturday
wearing?
or Sunday? Did you wait till Sunday to I'm curious on this.
I started a little bit Saturday, then we finished on. We didn't finish. We did more.
And you know what? It's going to melt soon.
My body is not.
But I think some of our top fans want to know what Jerron was wearing when he was shoveling. Was he in his tanky and Birkenstocks, or what does he wear?
No, but he was wearing like a bubble vest and like a cap. I was like, you're not properly dressed, and a scarf. I just live here. I don't make the rules about it.
Now,
What about you
Eugenia,
guys?
yeah, I want to know about Eugenia. Well, Eugenia and Sam are both on hills, I know for sure. And so, like,
Yeah.
how did that work out during this? And did anybody else just stay in and hide on Saturday and wait till Sunday to show?
We did. So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. I was having all kinds of technical difficulties. I escaped with Sam and several others. We ran further north to avoid the storm. We rode it out with other friends. And then when I came back on Sunday, I was super surprised to see that my wonderful neighbors had my mom had shoveled a path from my door to the sidewalk, and our neighbors helped finish and cleared our sidewalk and cleared my driveway, which was unbelievable.
What?
And so, yeah, I really lucked out. I didn't have to do tons of shoveling. I did clear my mom's spot. She lives down off of Cottage and Foster, and I cleared her spot and had some less than friendly elderly folks yell at me from the window.
Why?
Yes, that was fun. Calling me names. Because they have nothing better to do, but also because they, understandably, some of them had worked very hard to clear their own spots, and they wanted to make sure that, we weren't shoveling snow into their spots as we cleared other cars, which I can apparently.
It gets it's tricky.
I was not doing that, though. So I didn't really appreciate being called names. But apparently that's something that happens a lot. Happened to another friend in Boston. So, yeah.
Oh, in Boston, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But it was good. We beat the storm. Right, Sam? I think we beat the storm. Fun card games, eating a lot of food, having fun.
Hey, either fight or run away. Fight or flight. You got to
We
pick
flew-
one.
yeah, we
Conchetta
flew.
and I fought the good fight, and you guys ran away. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. After all the hard work clearing out on Sunday, went for the first time with some friends snowshoeing up in the fells, which was a lot of fun.
Very nice.
Look at those people.
So
I'm sure that was fun. I don't like being cold, so that
it
is
wasn't
not
that cold. It wasn't that cold, and it's quite similar to walking, but it's called snowshoeing.
Mm-hmm. It's walking with shoes meant for snow in
Yes.
cold weather.
Yeah. I have to say it was a lot of fun. So I'd never tried it before, and they had some extra shoes to spread around, and we had a nice walk in the woods with Tom Shampoo, the woodsman himself. Which I did get some video clips and did not edit them in time for the show, but rest assured, it's digital.
We'll
gold.
get them. We'll get them. So how's your 2022 going so far, Conchetta? I haven't seen you in forever. I didn't see you at Drop Off anymore.
Well, I started I started a new job in August, and I've just been sort of like learning that job and working super hard. So yes, I do like early drop off and late pickup, and I'm just constantly working and trying to enjoy my house and try to keep it clean. That's, I feel like, really problematic in the pandemic. We're always on top of each other. So I don't know. What about
I'm
you?
going to blame the pandemic.
Oh, I'm going to blame the pandemic. I'll blame Tom Catalini if I can.
It's a good
Well,
choice.
listen, if you're gonna blame me, you got to give me a chance. The next time there's an issue, send me a text and I'll help you straighten it out. And
All right. Well, you're on the record.
I'm a peacemaker. I'm a solutions guy,
Okay.
as they say.
Yeah.
What about you, Sam? What about you, Eugenia?
Same
Survive.
old stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Surviving. No, it's good. 2022 restarted today with February 1st.
Oh, what is it? Lunar New Year? Is that what we're getting at?
I'm saying new month, Lunar New Year, whatever you want it to be. If January didn't go the way you wanted it to, it's okay because you can restart today.
You can restart.
If you fell off your commitments for New Year's resolutions, things slipped, it's okay.
Oh,
Restart.
I'm too smart to play that resolutions game anymore. That's my resolution a long time ago was to give up the resolutions. Yeah, I just try to well, anyway, we have to get on to the news. The show has got to move along here. It's time to
There
break.
is no news. You can play it.
I thought you had a bullet item in there. Well, the people are going to miss it.
Make up a lie.
So, what the news? Jerome just posted that it's Black History Month. So
Jerron. Oh,
Yes,
yes.
of
It is
course,
Black
yes.
History Month. Day one.
yeah. So, all right.
That's
So,
right.
Sam, in the show doc, you just left over stuff from last week. Is that what it
I
is?
did.
There's literally no news. Nothing's
I don't-
happened in Melrose because you left town to avoid the storm.
Old people are yelling and cursing at innocent bystanders.
Yes, yes, that is currently what's happening around town. People are complaining about things not being shoveled out fast enough.
Yes.
What else is going on?
No, that's actually a real thing. Like I've seen moms in the different Facebook groups being really upset that their kids can't pass like safely. Shovel your sidewalks, people. They have to like walk in the street and try to maneuver.
Yes. That is a real thing. I wish someone would come and like clear the rest of the sidewalks are clear near the schools, but the like the space between the sidewalk and the curbs are not clear. So I saw a woman today with a double stroller. I feel like this happens every winter. And she had to walk in the street with two kids in a stroller, find a clear driveway, come up just to get her kids at pickup.
Yeah.
And there's no like, it wasn't anybody else's property. It was just, someone come clear all the snow.
Please.
Yeah, there's not a good system for that. I think the city does make an effort to clear it near the schools, and I think we own a little machine that drives on the sidewalk, like there's a little plow. I saw somebody posted on social media that like drives down the sidewalk. So we live near the Lincoln School, so I think they'll go out on Pleasant Street and they'll do the sidewalks and they'll do this area, but it's a problem in Melrose. And if you live on a corner, it's a problem. And so my critique is going to be Aaron Street, which I use to get off to work in the morning, and hills like I live on. They could have used one more pass because it was still pretty slippery a couple of days later. But we're not here to pick on the DPW. All in all, I thought it went well. When you get 2 feet of snow, there's not that many places to put it. That's the problem.
I mean, I was in 2015 where we got 7 feet of snow in like a few weeks. I was in Boston at the time, and school was canceled because we couldn't even maneuver around town.
Yeah.
To Eugenia's point, like kids were like walking in the street just to get around. So they canceled school just because we could not move unless you were driving a car barely.
I was in Boston last night, Boston and Cambridge, and I don't know, what was it, 8, 9 o'clock, whatever, later on at night. And all the trucks were out with the big machines that scoop up the snow and put it in the back of a truck. And they're literally like trucking it out of different areas because there's no place to put it.
We could use some of that, I think.
Well, I was reading Ryan Williams put a post together. If you're following him on Facebook, he is on top of it. He is going to ask lots of questions about how routes are picked for shoveling and snow. And he went over and talked to the guy in the little sidewalk mobile.
Yeah.
So I think anyway, well, Eugenia, welcome to Ward 7. Your city councilor is all over this in a very detailed way.
That's true.
Yep.
Nice.
And I don't know what else has been going on in Melrose. I've been to the Rising Eagle like 5 times. I'm going to go 2 more times this week. Anyone else?
No. I did go once. I'm glad it's open.
I've
But
been
no.
to Shaw's.
And Buckaloos.
And Buckaloo.
And Buckaloos.
So there's
Buckaloo is like the spot. I don't know. Like on Friday nights, it's like jumping. It's just about like this close to being a juke joint.
Oh, that should be a theme one Friday.
Right?
I like
There
it.
you go.
You heard it here first. Buckaloo's the juke joint.
It's so fun. Tastings and all the cutesy little Melrosey things to buy and, great wine and spirits.
Spirits, yeah. They got a good selection in there now. And I like all the tastings. But when you were asking what's going on in Melrose, I don't know if it's supply chain or the winter storm or whatever. But Stephanie was in Whole Foods tonight, and she said there was no fruit or vegetables and not a banana to be seen in the place. Like eerily sort of big run on the grocery store for whatever reason. I don't know why. Somebody said there was the Canadian trucker strike. I don't know what's happening out there, but That's news from Melrose. But we have to get this thing moving. We have a guest. We have a guest. This is enough fake it till you make it, Sam. We have to bring our guest on board, and let's talk about some meat and potatoes of what's happening with some planning around town, a very important topic. Sam, do you want to introduce our guest, and I'll play the walk-up music?
I would love to. Here comes Dana LeWinter. Great.
Hello. I didn't get to pick my walk-up music. I didn't know this was happening.
It's a classic. It's how you dance to it is what matters. So
I think I failed, but
no, we could do it again. We'll do it again at the end.
We're good. We're good.
But oh my gosh, thank you for coming. We've been scheduling you like 3 weeks now, and we're so happy this worked out because I have read thoroughly the housing production plan for the future of our city. But first, and we've had like several housing experts come on the show before, but I'd love for you to talk about like what it is you do for a living. And there's a lot of engagement in your title. Like, how do you do that work? And then you were on the production plan advisory committee with Jerron Green and Thais DeMarco and a few other awesome people. So what do you do for your day job, and how did you get connected to this, to move this for your city?
Yeah. Well, thanks first of all for having me on. So yeah, I'm Dana LeWinter, and I am I'm the Director of Municipal Engagement at Citizens Housing and Planning Association, or CHAPA. And what I do is I help communities build affordable housing advocacy coalitions at the local level so that they can help move forward their local housing strategies and make communities more equitable and accessible and affordable. So that's what I do for my day job. And yeah, I was part of the advisory committee for the housing production plan here in Melrose, which was really exciting.
So do we have a CHAPA group here, an advisory group here, or do we need one?
We don't, but I've been putting out feelers. We definitely have people who are advocates. I'm also on the board of the Melrose Affordable Housing Corporation. So folks there will do some advocacy. But yeah, I'd love to partner with people to do more housing advocacy. If you're interested, call me.
Just put your cell phone number in the comments.
Yeah.
So we talked about this plan before on the show, and it's affordable housing, trying to get to the 10% affordable housing in Melrose and in any town in Massachusetts. If you don't reach that threshold, there's this 40B bypass where a developer can get approval from the state and override all your local zoning. So this is a little bit more of a strategic response to that. It's like 150-page documents, a lot of details. We talked about that a little bit on the show, but there were some surprising facts, I think you said, and I saw some in there as well, but you might have a better sort of list at your fingertips than I might as far as some things that surprised you about the base data for the report.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised, because I do this work in so many communities, but I think people have assumptions about the kind of community that Melrose is. When we talk, especially when we talk about affordable housing, it's a lot of confusion about what do we mean when we say affordable housing, who is it for, who's it affordable to? And one of the things that I think people would be surprised is that I think it's 36, I have my notes, 36% of households in Melrose would actually be eligible for affordable housing by the state and federal definition based on their income. 36% of the people who live in Melrose right now.
So let's talk about that real quick because the what's the income threshold? Do you remember that?
So it's generally 80% of area median income, which Let's see what that is for a family of four. The area median income is about $119,000. So 80% of that for a family of four. And it's based on your household size. So I think that's fairly surprising. And the other stat that kind of surprised me, or I think would surprise other people, is the number or percentage of people who are cost burdened. So when we talk about affordable housing, you don't want to be spending more than 30% of your income on your housing costs. And 29% of households in Melrose are cost burdened. That means that, they have less money for food, transportation, medical costs, school issues, all of those things. So that really means that they're stretching their budget to be here in Melrose.
So it's tight. And then this is like a strategic plan to try and help the city move forward and respond to this responsibly over time, so on and so forth. What are some of the elements? What are some of the things that are envisioned in here for the city to be adopting that those of us not as well versed would readily sort of grasp onto?
Yeah, I think let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. It's a plan. It is not a prescription. It is not actually implementing anything. If the plan were adopted tomorrow by the planning board and the city council, which is the next step after we have a final plan, nothing would change tomorrow. It's a plan to reach our housing goals.
So let me interrupt you there and just say that that's valuable, because when a particular issue comes up and they do have to make a decision, everybody says, well, there has to be a plan and some engagement and some thinking around this. So I wouldn't minimize the value of this thing by saying, but it is good to understand it's only a plan.
Not at all. I don't think it minimizes it all. What it is it's been a long process. It's been well over a year, maybe even a year and a half of engagement, focus groups, forums, surveys, targeted interviews with people who maybe were underrepresented in the demographics of conversation initially, to make sure that their voices were heard. So it really is a strong plan. I think it has a lot of really important elements, but every strategy that's suggested in the plan would then have to go forward for additional approval for implementation. But it's broken out in that way.
Can I ask a quick question? Sure. Just in general, who sort of initiates this process? I'm newer to this conversation. I know my husband was like on the panel, but there's a little bit of separation of church and state here. So, like, who said we need to have this conversation and like we need a plan here?
So the city would say we want to do it. The state also, as Tom alluded to, the state also says every municipality should have a housing production plan. Under Chapter 40B, if they haven't reached 10% of their housing as affordable on what's called the subsidized housing inventory, you have some obligation to be planning to hit that goal. And so the city initiates that effort. They contracted with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is the regional planning agency, to help guide and facilitate that process. So they were the ones doing the data analysis and the needs assessment. And then they had a bunch of residents, including myself, as an advisory committee to kind of steer the ship as we heard feedback from the community and kind of put things onto paper.
Okay. So it's not just like a developer, who has an idea to get things done, trying to.
No, it's city-led and resident informed for sure.
Because the city loses control over potentially developments in the city if we don't meet that threshold, and you can get a little bit of a reprieve, I read in this plan, if we have a solid plan that's approved or whatever, adopted, for the next year or two, they give you a little runway to execute against that plan. So the city doesn't want developers, this is my interpretation, to be able to come in and build anything. And because they put the right amount of affordable housing, they can bypass all kinds of local zoning laws. And so Melrose also has a vision for what it wants to be. And I think you guys referenced the Melrose Forward plan in here. So the city's also done some thinking about how we want it to be. And so rather than have it just be totally reactive and subject to these things, I think that's my sense of kind of why you would do this.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's both those things, right? One is you want to be the drivers of growth and development in your own community, and you want it to fit the goals that the community has set. And then on the other hand, it really sets those values. It's not just about development. It's also about reaching people who don't necessarily need new housing, but maybe need assistance with energy efficiency or staying in their homes or downsizing and staying in this community. So it's a pretty comprehensive way of looking at it. And it also talks about some larger goals around racial equity and community engagement, which are important. They're not necessarily just about production. They're about, what kind of community do we want Melrose to be?
It's interesting you talked about growth. That was another surprising thing, was the chart where like the population peaked like in the 60s or something, and it's actually lower. And so, because Melrose feels kind of full up.
Yeah.
in a way, but there is space for growth. So the other thing I like to do when I look at these reports is I look at the pictures. And there's several sites that are identified where Garnis Market, there's just a 1-story, building in a space. And I think that there's some, I didn't really read all the details, but perhaps the folks who own it now have some interest in maybe selling it or developing it. And so when you look at some of these pictures, you can almost imagine like a bigger multi-use kind of, replacement for that. And so I think that's what the city wants to be thoughtful about. Like, what do we want to have end up there? If you have the private property owner go to the highest bidder who can override all your local stuff, maybe that's not where the city wants to end up. But
Yeah.
I actually like flipping through the pictures because it helps you kind of, imagine some possibilities.
Yeah. There's the draft has some parcels that are kind of potentially in the development pipeline now, and then the others that are kind of imagined that could be that going in that direction. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation around making development close to transit and close to places that are walkable, close to commercial centers. So a lot of them try to fit those kind of development constraints to kind of make the best use of those sites that might be changing hands in the near future.
Yeah, so I was going to ask a similar question about how this sort of fits in with the overall vision for the city. We obviously have a lot of needs. It's not just about housing. Like most communities in the area, there's lots of buildings that need to be brought up to code or renovated or, built out. We have a new library coming. There's conversations about, public safety buildings have been a part of a conversation for a long time with housing needs. So assuming this plan gets adopted, kind of what's sort of the next step after city council reviews it, and what effort needs to be made to make sure that these things are happening in a cohesive and complementary way?
I think obviously I do housing as my day job. It's my passion. So I see housing as kind of central to all of those things that you mentioned, Eugenia. Like, we can't have a thriving school system without people who can afford to live in their homes, right? If families are struggling, their kids are going to struggle. We're not going to have a diverse school population if we don't have a diverse population in the first place. Our seniors are not going to have all the amenities that they need if they can't afford to stay here. And our downtowns won't be as economically thriving if people can't walk and spend money at them. So I think it's really important to think about how they all fit together. But once the plan is hopefully adopted, it will go to the planning board for adoption, then it'll go to the city council for adoption, and then it will be approved by the state, hopefully, assuming that everything moves in the process that it should. And then there's an implementation phase. So basically, either the planning board or the city council or various commissions and boards will have to take up each of the individual strategies and start moving them forward. So that might be zoning changes, it might be allocating funding, it might be doing better education about programs that are out there. It really depends on it. And there will probably be an implementation committee that will help to move that process along and think about all of the various moving pieces about, if we allocate funds to this housing effort, what does that mean for our budget in general? Or how can we raise additional revenue in order to fund those kinds of things?
Great question or statement, because I was just going to ask. So the things that I'm reading in here are solid and sound, but they're not new concepts necessarily. They're just putting the things on paper that we're going to commit to get these things done, and put in the plan that we could then commit to. But I think it was yesterday or the day before, Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu thought outside the box and has now filed a home rule petition for any real estate transactions over $2 million, residential to over $2 million, would then apply some of those proceeds towards an affordable housing fund to continue the real work of actually building these units or building this housing that we need.
Yeah.
Have you seen any other outside of the box thinking that we could be looking at here in Melrose, where, beyond the plan? Took a note in here. There's a piece in here around create a down payment assistance fund for low and moderate income households. That's seems like a great I don't know how the financial model looks for that, but
Yeah.
years ago we've talked about in the city of Boston maybe figuring out how to crowdfund or crowdsource for some of those funds to be invested in our young families or our low to moderate income families who need those down payments. So outside of the box things. Go.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, we do have some funds that we have to spend that haven't been spent yet. So just in the last year, Melrose adopted an affordable housing trust. And now that has been seeded, there's money from our inclusionary zoning program, which is, when new development happens, there's affordable units that are built into that development. And sometimes there's cash payments as part of that calculation. That money is going to be in an affordable housing trust. That money could be used for some of those projects. The plan does talk about implementing the Community Preservation Act. That would be money on the table for housing, open space, and historic preservation. Back to Eugenia's point about all those kind of competing but complementary things that we could be doing together. So that's money on the table that we don't get in Melrose. There's state matching funds. We don't get those state matching funds because we don't collect the local CPA money in Melrose ourselves. So that's another option. And then as far as transfer fees, there's a bunch of communities who are looking at that. Boston and Somerville and some of the Cape and Island communities. They need a home rule petition in order to do that. Once that happens, it would kind of open the opportunity for other communities to do it, or maybe even some enabling legislation at the state that we could then implement here at Melrose. So
what is
my thoughts on housing is every tool in the toolbox we should be thinking about. So I think this plan is a really thoughtful plan of kind of some of the concrete things that we can and should be doing. And then, but that doesn't mean anything else is off the table as far as I'm concerned.
And I was going to mention that, the housing crisis is not unique to Melrose, right? It's a statewide issue.
Yeah.
It may look a little bit different depending on what part of the state you're in or what community you're in, but it's still a real issue. And so and from a policy perspective, there's nothing worse than like a patchwork of city by city solutions. So there have been some conversations at the state level trying to think about, the transfer tax as an option to support affordable housing development alongside, clean energy and climate goals here in Massachusetts. And it would be great to see a city like Melrose, as you said, Sam, think outside of the box and really kind of lead by example to help move us along as a Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick technical question because a couple of you mentioned home rule petition. I don't know what that is, but that sounded like it was fundamental to some of those things. What is that?
Yeah. So essentially there's either enabling legislation. So at the state, for example, enabling legislation allows every single municipality in Massachusetts to create an affordable housing trust. That is just a given by state legislation. For some things, though, there's no enabling legislation at the state level. What you need is it's called a home rule petition. So you petition to the state to give your municipality the ability to do certain things.
Okay, so that's an individual. So it's not like a state level thing and then any community can do it. Each
community would ask for it. So there's the enabling legislation, and then there's the home rule, which allows just your municipality to do it.
Cool.
I have another crazy idea, but I might be too embarrassed to say it on television.
Just say it. Come on.
So our housing stock is what it is, like right now. And what I'm finding is that as people go through phases of life, there are some families that expand and need more space in their starter home, and there are some families, Tom and other who contract a little bit and are still in large homes, and then even as our senior our older Melrosian population might need homes that are on single levels and so on. So there's an opportunity, I feel, for some sort of exchange of property that we can figure out what that funding model looks like, because obviously the market rates would be different. But for folks who want to downsize, not being able to afford to downsize in Melrose, folks who want to upsize, not being able to upsize in Melrose, but having at least stability in our community and having an exchange of property essentially seems like it's very doable for a community this size. I've heard it on both sides.
Yeah.
I'm not a broker, so I'm not making deals, nor could either side afford the other property where they are in their lives. So,
but that's
go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to ask. That's because of the nature of the housing stock, right? There's nobody prohibiting that kind of transaction or marketplace. You're just saying there aren't the housing configuration isn't such that there's enough.
I think the market too plays a big factor. The market here is probably the biggest factor.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam, are you talking about like creating actual pathways for people to have these specific exchanges?
Yeah.
To trade. I mean, I think there's a couple things I would say to that. Yes, we need a better mix of housing in Melrose, right? Like we have a lot of single family homes, beautiful single family homes, and we have a decent amount of multifamily, especially near Oak Grove. We don't have a lot of that like 2 to 4 to 5 unit buildings, which might allow for someone, let's say, to live on a first floor and rent out the second floor, or a triple decker, which is a really common kind of housing throughout Massachusetts, especially Eastern Mass. So allowing a little bit more of that would be helpful. Also, accessory dwelling units. We do allow accessory dwelling units by special permit, and that's a huge way for people to stay in their community, downsize. Either they can stay in the home and have an accessory unit for a little extra income, or they could move into the accessory unit and have a more simple one level space and rent out the primary home. So that's a simpler way. It's not quite the mechanism that you're talking about, Sam, but I think it gets at the fact that if you don't, like, I always like to think about, if you look around your community and you don't see a place where you can live all of your life cycle of housing as you're getting at, then there's a gap in your community. So is the gap for people who want to downsize and stay in Melrose and actually have a place that they can afford and works for them as far as accessibility. That also is, a lot of overlap with the disability community, making homes more accessible for people at all stages of their life. So really identifying those gaps and filling them with whatever housing opportunities we can, whether affordable, market rate, it's kind of across the board. And like you said, Melrose is not unique in that. That's why the needs assessment is really important, to look at exactly what it is that we're lacking and how we can fill it.
Off air, I'll pitch you on my municipal bond scheme. But it would be nice for
and we're good.
Schema. It would be nice if we had a way for the community to be stable instead of having to move out when they need more space or move out when they need less space. I think, the market is the driver that drives people out of this town. We can do things as a small community to counter that, in my opinion. But
although I don't know the answer, but I would assume growth is pretty stable here.
It is. I think that, we've had a decent amount of production. I'm
sorry, I mean like population growth.
Oh, population growth is fairly stable. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really have like a huge flight. Do we? Tell me, do we have like a lot of people who are leaving versus a lot of people coming in, or does it seem really kind of stable, evened out?
I don't know. I don't know that number because I don't know how many people are moving in versus moving out versus is our population staying somewhat stable? I mean, that's an interesting question, is how many people are feeling like they're forced to leave Melrose or going somewhere else seeking the kind of housing that they need. I'm not sure I have that.
I think that number that you mentioned in the beginning is pretty telling. The fact that there is a quarter of the population that's, essentially house poor. Like,
yeah.
That I think that's pretty telling. People will do whatever they can to be in the community because they want to be in the community. So gets back to that question that you raised earlier, Dana, which is how do we make that possible without leaving people at risk of, not being able to provide all of the other things that they need in for their families or in their homes, whether that's utilities or medical service or food or whatever it is.
And as you mentioned, wanting to become a first-time home buyer, the down payment assistance program that Sam mentioned, if you're cost burdened in your housing, you're never going to save for a down payment in order to purchase a home here in Melrose, most places in the greater Boston area. So thinking about for folks who want to be able to make that transition from renter to homeowner, it is really difficult. And I think the plan also specifically speaks to the racial equity aspect of that, which is generational wealth and being able to offer an opportunity for a community that is not very diverse to become more diverse. And if we are expensive and we don't have a lot of opportunities for new people to move into our community, we'll never become more diverse. So I think that's where that angle in the plan really is important, making sure that we're not just talking about housing and affordability, but who gets to live in those homes. Because ultimately, it's not about the built home. It's about the person and the family and the community that lives in them.
So is the general goal for these things, for these sorts of plans, for people to be able to just get into the community as renters? Does it create somehow opportunities for them, like just to be here so that they can think about buying? Or do you know what I mean? Like, what is the ultimate goal? Like, what do we want? Do we want this to be the place where, yes, you can buy a home, yes, you can build a life, or no, yes, you can live here and then you'll go someplace else and buy your home? Like, do you know what I mean?
To me, I think we want people who can do any of those. If whatever it is, the moment that they're in their life, if they want to live here as a renter, great, we want you here. If they want to live here as a homeowner, great, we want you here. But are all of those options available to everybody? I don't think so yet. And so that's the goal of the plan, is to open up as many of those options as possible and make it more affordable, accessible, and equitable.
Mm-hmm. Your point on the first step is interesting, right? Because even if it's a stretch, like it was for us to get in the game, Melrose has been favorable over time in that the value of the property increases, but you can't benefit from that if you can't make that first step into ownership. So that seems like an important lever. And then on the other side of that, what Sam was talking about, people come and go for all different kinds of reasons. You might want to go, you changing jobs out of state, or
you might not want to have to shovel 2 feet of snow.
You don't want to have to shovel 2 feet of snow or whatever. But the interesting linchpin there is, like, are you leaving because you kind of have to leave, or it's like, do you want to, or do you have to? Like, that's the thing. So I think that's an interesting point on both ends. Like, how do you help people get into the game so that they can then benefit from, which I have a question about affordable housing. So let's say I could afford to own property. Am I then restricted on that, that asset gaining value over time because it is affordable housing? Like, are people left out? Restricted? Yeah. Are they left out of that end of it?
So there's different formulas, but generally there's a formula that goes into, let's say we're talking about home ownership, affordable home ownership. Generally there's a formula so that the next person who moves in, who purchases that, it's still affordable to them with some value gain for the original homeowner. There's a lot of conversations happening around that. I will say about, is this an asset building strategy, or is this a housing stability strategy? Are those two things necessarily in conflict? Can we do them both? Can we keep homes affordable but allow people to build wealth? Especially because home ownership is wealth building for people without a deed restriction. So I will say that's a conversation that's happening, but generally there's a restriction of some sort that keeps that unit affordable over time.
This is so great. I didn't fill out any comments or questions there was a public comment period. Will those, so usually people who do fill out those things are very passionate about this stuff, which I'm super curious about. Do you know if those or some of those questions will become public so we can see what people are wondering?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. I do know that the city staff and MAPC are working to incorporate those comments and the comments of the advisory committee into the next version of the draft, hopefully a final version. I don't know if the comments themselves will be shared. And then once there's that plan, it will go to the planning board, hopefully by the end of the month or so. I think the date, if I'm correct, is the planning board meeting on February 28th. And then from there, if it gets approved by the planning board, it goes to the city council and then up to the state at that point.
So what have you heard as you engage with stakeholders who have some interest in this plan? What have you heard of critiques, praise, whatever, initial feedback? I don't know if you've seen any of these comments. Like, what's the word on the street?
Yeah, I've seen comments. I mean, I think there's a kind of a lot of kind of clarifying questions. What do all of these strategies mean? There are some questions about what kind of growth and development do we want in Melrose. There are definitely some questions about whether the plan goes far enough in some of the strategies, especially on opening up multifamily in the whole city as opposed to in just certain parts of the city. So I think the comments were a lot of them were very favorable, and then there were comments all over the place. To be honest, that's good community engagement, though. I said that's my job, my day job. If everyone was saying this plan is perfect and rubber stamp send it along, then we probably haven't done our job. We really want to find a plan that is both ambitious and forward thinking and sets a vision, but also is doable and can be completed. And so you're probably going to have comments on both sides of that, if that's what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, it's great that you're getting engagement. I think for stakeholders who have an interest and are paying attention, and then I don't know how the general public gets involved. It's not an easily approachable topic, and this is a lovely report, and it's very well written. It's got different fonts and colors, and it's laid out very nicely, but it's still 150 pages.
It's a lot.
It's robust.
Yeah.
The executive summary was fantastic, though.
Yeah.
I really think.
And that's what the point, one of the strategies even is better education and public engagement. I mean, it is a complicated topic, but yeah. In my work that I do at CHAPA, I talk about how, there's people who are experts in housing, but everyone has lived in a home, has tried to buy a home, has tried to rent a home, has been wondering what's the right choice for them. So everyone has their lived expertise. So we all really are housing experts. We all own this kind of sense of community that we want to build. So while a lot of the technical pieces are really hard to approach, the big overall goals, I think, are pretty approachable, and everyone has a voice in that. So,
well, I am super excited to see what comes next, and I love the part on BP3 and BP4 around more dialogue. So thank you for coming on. Please come back and tell us how we've done and where we're going next. But it would be, thank you. I appreciate your time. I know evenings are tough. So, and I'm so happy that Conchetta and Eugenia came to have our show takeover. Come back again soon. Hopefully there'll be more going around town other than blizzards and snow and shoveling that we could talk about. Maybe Jerron will come and tell us, do a fashion photog or something, and tell us what we should be wearing. Nope.
That's a separate episode. I need to understand Jerron's fashion. We can talk that because Conchetta is my fashionista, but apparently Jerron is too.
He's a trendsetter. Yep.
I'm sorry, Jerron is very stylish. I am not suggesting otherwise.
Any last words, anyone? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
This was really great. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was very helpful.
Yes. Thanks, Conchetta, Eugenia, Dana. Thanks for joining us tonight. It was a great conversation, great show, and it was lovely to sort of dig into the details, and I think you made it nice and approachable and understandable for us, so I appreciate that, and just great questions all around. I don't know if we told you, Dana, that at the end of the show, you have to dance off with us. We're going to play the theme song one more time. You don't have to. It's highly advised. it's like a key strategic
Okay.
recommendation in our show plan
Okay.
that we've worked on, and we've gotten input from stakeholders across the community, and it's pretty much the way to go. And if I can get this gizmo working here, my battery's almost dead. Hang on, I have to unlock my phone. All right, here we go. And we will see you around town.
Downtown.